All right, hello students. Today we're moving on with lesson 13 from ratio tables to equations using the value of a ratio. Here you go, exercise 1. George is mixing a special shade of orange paint. He mixed 1 gallon of red paint with 3 gallons of yellow paint. Based on the ratio, which of the following statements is true? Well, let's first identify what we have, what they're giving us, or giving to us, so we can see what we need to do. First, we have orange paint. This is what George is making. He's making some kind of orange paint. Based on just that statement, we don't know kind of how many gallons of orange paint we're going to have just yet. If we continue to go, we read, he mixed 1 gallon of red paint. So we are given red paint, and we're making a mixture of one, or given 1 gallon to make the mixture, with 3 gallons of yellow paint. So let's go ahead and put Y for yellow, and that represents by 3 gallons. It says, based on this ratio, which of the following statements is true? Well, if he's mixing 1 gallon of red with 3 gallons of yellow, the question is how many orange gallons will he have? Well, if we're mixing 1 and 3, we add them together. 1 plus 3 is 4. So based on that information, we have these kind of quantities. We have, after they make the mix, we have 4 gallons of orange. We have we used 1 gallon of red and 3 gallons of yellow. So based on those numbers, we should be able to answer the following questions. So let's go and look at these questions with me. It says 1/4 of the 4 gallon mix would be yellow paint. Would this be a true or false statement? Well, the mix, remember, is the orange. Well, here's the orange, and yes, it's 4 gallons. Would 3 of those gallons be yellow? And the answer is yes, because 3 of the 4 gallons would have to be yellow to make the mixture. All right, so the answer is yes or true. So let's go ahead and put it just simply a T for true. Next, let's go ahead and look at the next one. For every 1 gallon of yellow paint requires 1/3 gallons of red paint. Well, up here in the ratio, we're given a yellow gallons of 3. How would I convert the 3 to a 1? Well, I had to divide by 3, and that gives me 1. If I use the same kind of philosophy or same problem with the red paint, remember the red is giving me 1, I have to divide that by 3, and that does give me 1/3. So to have 1 gallon of yellow paint would be 1/3 gallons of yellow paint would be 1/3 gallon of red paint. So yes, that would be true as well. Next, it says for 1 gallon of red paint requires 3 gallons of yellow paint. Well, that's kind of right off the problem. 1 gallon of red paint, 3 gallons of yellow paint. Yep, that's true. No, not a whole lot of math to be done there. The next one, it says there is 1 gallon of red paint for 4 gallon mix of orange paint. Well, 1 gallon of red paint. So yeah, 1 gallon of red paint, 4 gallons of orange paint. Yep, 4 gallons of orange paint. That would be true. So far, all of them would be true. Let's kind of see if the last one is true. There are 2 gallons of yellow paint and 8 gallons of orange paint. Well, remember, orange has 4. If we want to make it look like 8, that means we had to have multiplied it by 2. If I multiply the yellow by 2, that would give me 6. So this says 2 gallons of yellow paint. We would need 6 gallons of yellow paint. So no, this would be false. This is the only one that is incorrect. All right, so that's kind of taking the information provided and kind of dealing with the different numbers using the ratio value that they gave us. All right, let's go ahead and look at exercise number 2. What they're asking us to do. It says, based on the following information on red and yellow paint given in exercise 1, so based on what we just did and what we talked about, the 1-to-3 ratio creating 4 gallons of orange, complete the table. So here it says red paint, yellow paint, and relationship. Well, if there's 3 gallons of yellow, how many gallons of red would there be? Well, there'd be 1 gallon of red. Over here is the relationship. Kind of what did we do to come up with the answer to yellow? Well, there's 3 gallons of yellow because we multiplied the red gallon, the 1, by 3, because 1 times 2 gives me the 3. So this relationship we should stay consistent kind of all the way through, or stay very similar all the way through, and kind of go through it as we fill in the table. Well, if my red paint goes up by 1, that means my yellow paint has to go up by 3. So if I add 3 to it, I get 6. Well, if I have 6 gallons of yellow and 2 gallons of red, what would I multiply by that to get the 6? Well, I'd multiply by 3. 2 times 3 is 6. Continue to go. If yellow increases by 3, that means red has to increase by 1. Remember, a 3-to-1 ratio. And if we look over here, 3 times 3 gives us the 9. So there we go. So once again, the yellow goes up by 3. That means the red goes up by 1. That would give me 4. So if I take the yellow, remember I kind of keep this consistent. This is the yellow gallon, or yellow paint, excuse me. If I have 4 gallons of red, what would I multiply by to get 12? That would be a 3. And if I go to the last one, kind of finishing this up, taking the last step, this goes up by 1, this goes up by 3, that would give me 15. And so 15 is the yellow, equals 5 times 3. All right, so if we kind of look at what this table looks like, remember, if we discuss this side right here is the yellow side. This is the yellow paint. If we looked here, this continued to change right here. This is the red paint. And if we look here, this stays consistent. This is 3. Well, if I multiply the red paint times 3, that would always equal the yellow paint. This is what we're talking about by creating an equation. This is an equation to determine how much yellow paint I would need given my red paint. So that's kind of a very brief or very basic introduction to what we're going to be doing. We're going to do a couple more problems kind of dealing with the same type of situation. So go ahead and stop the video. Go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, hello students. Let's go ahead and move on with exercise 3. Let's go ahead and see what they want us to do. All right, it says George now plans to mix red paint and blue paint to create a purple paint. So red and blue create purple. The color of purple he has decided to make combines red paint and blue paint at a ratio of 4-to-1. So red paint is 4, blue paint 1. If George can only purchase paint in 1-gallon containers, construct the ratio table for all possible combinations of red and blue paint that will give George no more than 25 gallons of purple paint. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of just underline real quick some important information. So we're using red and blue at a 4-to-1 ratio. We don't want any more than 25 gallons of purple paint. That's pretty much all the kind of the important pieces of information. So let's go ahead and kind of just start filling out our table. So for blue paint, remember red paint to blue paint is 4-to-1. So the blue is the 1. So please make sure you're paying attention to how the numbers are labeled. That means the red would be 4. Right now we're just going to fill out this side and then we'll talk about the relationship. Well, if the blue paint goes up to 2, the red paint would go up to 8. If we continue to go, blue paint 3, red paint would go to 12. Blue paint 4, red paint would go to 16, not 15. Blue paint 5, red paint would go to 20. And of course, that is 20 gallons of purple paint. Remember, we have to add those two together to create the purple. That's 25 gallons. If we look at the relationship like we did on exercise 2, if we looked that we have 4 gallons of red, how did I get that? By working with the blue. Well, if I have 1, I multiplied it by 4, and that gave me my gallons of red paint. So just kind of looking at kind of what's going on in the relationship between the two. I took the blue paint, I multiplied it by 4 to create the red paint. If I continue to go, how did I get the red paint of 8? Well, I took the blue paint of 2, I multiplied it again, excuse me, get my cursor out of the way, again by 4, and that's how I came up with 8. Same thing, how did I come up with 12 for red? Well, I took my blue paint of 3, multiplied it by 4 once again to get 12. And as you can see, hopefully you're seeing a pattern. How did I come up with 16? I took my blue paint of 4, multiplied it by 4, excuse me, and got 16. And the last one, how did I come up with 20? I took my blue paint of 5, multiplied it by 4, again I came up with 20. So hopefully you see a pattern here as I took my blue paint right here and multiplied it by 4 to come up with the answer to my red paint. So there you go. We fill out the table, we fill out the relationship. Now we have some questions to answer. It says, write an equation that will let George calculate the amount of red paint he will need in any given amount of blue paint. Well, we kind of just did that and kind of talked this at the very end. If I take any kind of amount of red paint, or I want to come up with a number of red paint, just like we did here. Remember, this was the red paint, the 4, the 8, the 12, the 16, and the 20. If I want to come up with an equation to come up with that red paint, and I given a number of blue paint, what would I have to do? Well, over here, we multiplied it by 4 each time. So red paint equals the blue paint, the amount of the blue paint, times 4. Now, there's another way of writing this. If I'm still looking for the red paint, equals, well, if we have B times 4, sometimes we write it like this. You'll see it written like this, 4B. There you go. So red paint equals 4 times B. That's a multiplication problem. So there you go. That answered the question of how we would come up with the red paint based on the blue paint. So let's go look at the next question. Write an equation that will let George calculate the amount, I'll get that out of the way, the amount of blue paint. So now we're kind of doing the opposite. If we want to come up with the blue paint, the amount of blue paint, he would need a given amount of red paint. So if I have a given amount of red paint, what would I need to do, or what would I want to multiply by to get my blue paint? Well, if we look back up here, if it's blue times 4 to get the red, we take the ratio value of here and we have to flip it around. Remember, this 4 is a ratio value of 4 to 1. If we flip it around, that would give me my blue. Oh, so let's get the black one out. It would be a 4 over 1. I have to multiply it by 1/4 because blue paint is 1 out of every 4 red paints. So once again, the blue paint is the top number of 1, is the ratio value of 1 to every 4 values of red. And of course, if I write it again like we did before, blue is equal to, if I kind of switch it around, 1/4, because it's 1 out of every 4 red paint. So there you go. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and use these kind of equations to kind of answer a couple questions. Here it says, if George has 24 gallons of red paint, how many blue paints will he have to use to create the described color of purple? So once again, we're given how much of red paint. Well, here's our equation, or here's our equation we're going to use. The blue paint equals 1/4 of the red paint. Well, if I take out the red paint, if I say, okay, blue equals 1/4, and instead of the red paint, we're going to use the number 24 because that's given to us. We're going to multiply it by 24. How many gallons of blue paint will we need? Well, blue paint would be equal to, well, 1/4 times 24, or we could say 24 times 1 is 24, divided by 4 is 6. So George will need 6 gallons of blue paint. And we kind of take the same type of situation, but if George is given 24 gallons of blue paint, how much red paint will he need to calculate? We're going to use the equation from above. The red paint equals 4 times B, or 4 times blue. And we go ahead and plug it in. Well, we know that we're going to use 24 for blue. Oh, excuse me. Let's go ahead and erase that. We know we're going to use 24 from blue because it's given to us, so we're going to multiply 24 times 4. And it's going to tell us the red paint equals 4 times 24. Well, that would give us, you can do the multiplication on the side if you need to, is 96. All right. So here are the two answers to these questions. As you can see, I didn't write out anything yet. I want you to write out what the proper answer is to the blue gallons of 6 and the red gallons of 96. So please take a moment, write out a sentence for both of these to state the proper answer, to make sure we're writing this appropriately. And I'll be calling on you to kind of give me your answer here in just a moment. Once you are done writing down your answers, please move on to part B. Try to go ahead and work through this section of part B with you and your partner before you move on to the next assignment. And we'll go over this in class together. All right, so go ahead and stop the video. Make sure you take care of those two answers. Make sure you write